If you ask me, the Queen's Gambit is one of the greatest achievements ever to come out of a streaming platform. I've always wanted to do some sort of recreation, but it somehow just felt out of reach. I mean, I would need an actress who resembles the magnificent Anya Taylor-Joy. I'd need a really sick location true to the period, and then probably a big crew with a whole lot of lights, right? And action! In this video, I'm going to show you how to light a Netflix level scene with only 3 lights and how clever planning can significantly reduce the budget. For camera, I chose the Sony FX3 paired with a set of Typoc Samira Cs. Now I'm still going to use them for a few months before I give my own opinion, but just based off the look, I can say that I am well impressed. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in lighting over the years is that less is more. Just because you have a lot of lights doesn't mean you have to use them. If a simple solution does the job, there's no reason to further complicate or overdo it. The biggest factor that makes a lighting setup simple is the location. This has led me to look for certain criteria when scouting for locations, because I know if I choose right, I'm going to save time and money. First, it has to be plug and play. In other words, little to no set design is required. In this location, we only brought in actors and a chess clock. Yep, I saw the chess set on the pictures and immediately found out if we could use it. Second, I need maximum control over the light, whether it's coming from outside or inside. In other words, I need to be able to add or remove light with minimal effort. This location had a lot of variety, and initially I wanted to shoot in the library, but I quickly realized that in order to get the result I want, it would take a lot more resources to block off excess light and put lights outside on the balcony. Last but also the most important, it has to be backlight friendly. In other words, when my desired angle is set up, even before I add any lights, the camera should be on the shadow side and I can simply motivate light sources to add shape into the scene. Just take a look at this first wide setup. This is what it looked like before any lights were switched on. Looking at the hands and the hair, you can see there's a light source from above. The location had a big diffused dome with natural daylight coming through. Second, you have these windows in the back that can easily be motivated to complement the light coming from above. This is what I call prime property. All the elements in the room lean towards cinematic lighting. You have maximum depth with a good distance between the subject and the background. These pillars progressively blurring more into the distance. You have color contrast created by the lamps, pockets of light everywhere, and you don't have to compete with daylight, making it easier to use smaller budget lights. Moving on to the breakdown. It's important to always start with lighting your wide shot regardless of chronology. Once you have a setup dialed in, it's easier to bring the lights closer and get more flattering light on the face for close-ups. But the point of a wide is to light the space and to establish relevant lighting sources that affirm your motivation in the close-ups. First, we've got an edge light creating separation on our main character, but also motivating the source coming from above. I used a Nanlite FC120C paired with a projector attachment on a combo boom extending over the ledge just out of frame. I specifically chose the 120C for its size and output because it's such a hassle to adjust a boom with big lights with big attachments. The 120C is super tiny, almost the same as a 60C, but with double the output, it gives you more creative options. Next, we have a key light that motivates the windows from behind at a 45-degree angle, creating a nice Rembrandt triangle on the face. I used a Forza 500 bicolor on a 120 softbox, shooting double diffused through a 4x4 quarter diffusion silk. The 500 was overkill and I could have easily used an FC60 or 120 because I only shot at about 3% intensity. If I stopped lighting the wide here, it would have already been good enough, but I decided to add just a little bit more lift on the dark side, and I did that with the PavoSlim 120C shooting through a softbox into the roof, bouncing back. It's important to note that the bounce is not sandwiching, but also coming in at an angle, which helps to wrap the light around just a little more into the dark side. Moving on to the medium wide, the FC120 got swung over even closer in order to hit almost directly from behind, helping even more with separation. Because of the composition, the boom had more space to get a better angle. On the key light, I actually had to walk the Forza 500 back a notch because I couldn't hide it behind a pillow, and the fill stayed exactly the same. I also had to close this curtain because it was completely blown out with bright light coming from outside, and fixing this would just take up a whole lot of time and resources. This has to be one of my favorite shots because there are so many elements adding depth. The tungsten lights are creating beautiful color contrast, and the pillars progressively blur more as it runs deeper into the background. Now, just before someone comments on the shallow depth of field, I want to share my reasoning behind it. This was shot on T1.5 and I would have easily preferred something like 2.8 or 3.5. But the decision was purely made around budget. Shooting wide open gave me just enough exposure to easily balance my 3 lights with the overall scene. If I wanted to shoot deeper, I would definitely require more lights. Something like an Evoke 1200 or 2400 to push more lift into the room, possibly through the skylight or just bouncing against the roof. I'm also not a fan of shooting at the second base ISO on this camera. At least not if it means I need to put an ND in front of the lens, because I just know it's going to make the image softer and noisier. This leads me to the next frame. Getting closer means it's possible to walk in the key light even more, because it's well out of sight to camera left. The big change here was the FC120. I adjusted the edge light to only hit on the arm because I wanted to crank up the intensity and max out at 100%. I feel like this adds really nice texture to the frame. Shooting hot like this generally works as long as you don't hit the face or the hair, and it helps to create a sense of realism. A patch of hard light coming in through a skylight perhaps. The bounce on the fill stayed the same, and it helps to just lift the subject in the foreground and creates a better contrast ratio from bright to dark. Another way to light this could also be to hit the chest set directly and make that the hot spot. This automatically creates a nice bounce back into the face, although it's a tad bit warmer because of the wooden surface. You also have to consider potential bounce back from the red carpet. If you hit it too hard, it can also create a really bad red cast. In this case, you would throw a blackout cloth on the floor to minimize the bounce. On the first wide, we also put a white diffusion cloth on the floor to help with this, but the intensity was low enough not to create any obvious bounce. The moment you hit it too hard, like in this example, it will ruin the shot and show up in the chair and an obvious fill on the shadow side, so something to be mindful of. Before I carry on, if you enjoyed these breakdowns, I want to invite you to sign up for the waiting list for my upcoming lighting course. In it, I'm not just breaking down a ton of real-world setups, but I will also explain the planning process, how I do location scouts, and the concept of color theory, and how it applies to everything from Kelvin temperatures to wardrobe and set design. Moving on, I feel it's important to mention that we move the table and chairs on every angle change. This form of cheating is essential to get the most out of every composition. Just because the wide works doesn't mean a medium or close-up is going to give you the best composition. In this shot, the table was moved in line with the background to fall between these pillars, helping with symmetry, even though perfect symmetry is not achieved, judging by the 2 lamps. In the close-up following after, you can see how much further we moved everything back. The table is nowhere near the center, but this was done to get a good composition on this lamp without Dirk blocking it with his body. Going even closer on the 75mm, we moved the table back even further, making it impossible for Dirk to sit on a chair, so he had to stand on his knees to remain in the foreground. This was the only way to keep Henri positioned between these 3 lamps, creating a really beautiful composition. On the final shot, as we get super close, it's easy to bring the diffusion frame right up to Henri's face, and this creates a softer, flattering light. Because the camera angle is more front facing, I added some negative fill on the dark side to keep the shape, and again the Rembrandt triangle comes through strong. To finish off, I want to play you a short clip that I filmed on my phone during the recce. My gaffer wasn't able to join on this day, so I just made a quick recording to get him up to speed with what I want to do. Alright, so this is our main shooting area. Our scene is going to be happening at the table over there. Subject's going to sit on that chair looking this way to an opponent. They're going to play chess, and we have these nice lines running that way with the pillars and that way. That's giving us some nice depth as well as a lot of depth in the background. The main reason I chose this one is because we have no light on this side and we have backlight coming from that side and nice soft light coming from the top. So that means it's going to be easy to shoot from this side, having camera on the shadow side. Lighting wise, we will probably put a boom stand up there with a small edge light just to motivate some of that top light, create a nice edge on the subject. And then we'll have a big soft light between these two pillars over here as a key to motivate the window and the top, which we will put on our subject. And then if we need to, we might have a soft fill just from this side, just depending on how much we get. We might put a silk or something here just for a natural fill. As you can see, we pretty much did exactly that. And this is something I'm going to teach in my course, how to read the room and how to interpret what is possible with the lights you have at your disposal. A big thanks to Nanlite for sponsoring this video and for constantly supporting my ideas. As always, comments, drop them down below and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.